If you're looking for help with teaching students in youth ministry, this is the video for you. I'm going to focus today on one method for organizing your lesson, sermon, or talk, or whatever you call the part where you teach students from the Bible. I'll be doing other videos to help you choose what to teach, how to teach, and to increase the interaction and engagement with students. Today is the 30,000-foot overview to give you a basic structure to help your teaching flow more naturally, be memorable, give a specific action step, and to inspire your students to act on what you have taught. This is our road sign for today. The teaching guide I'm giving you has 5 parts: me, we, God, you, we. And if it sounds familiar to some of you, that's because it comes from the book Communicating for a Change by Andy Stanley and Lane Jones. This book is focused on preaching, but I have found these principles to be really effective in teaching students. In fact, I'd recommend you grab a copy of this book or audiobook. I'm just giving you a snapshot today of all the great principles and wisdom for preparing to teach or preach and to delivering that message. Speaking of that, let's get to it. When you prepare your lesson, start out with me. This is your introduction. If you're speaking to a group as a guest speaker, you're new on staff, or when you promote students and have several who don't know you, this is a good time to give a brief introduction of yourself. For example, my name is Mike Sheely. I'm a full-time youth pastor, and I've been in youth ministry for over 20 years. I created this channel and put these videos together to help other people in youth ministry to have healthy and effective ministries. Just a few sentences, really simple, but now you know a little bit more about me. Same thing with your students. Don't spend too much time giving a whole background of yourself. Just give them enough to know a little bit more about who you are, and then get into the teaching, which is why you were there. Your main focus here is to introduce the topic you're teaching and establish common ground on the topic with your students. This isn't about being their friend or cool or claiming to know everything about their world. This is showing you understand a part of their world. Often, this can be sharing a story from when you were their age that connects with the topic. If you don't have one, you might reach out and ask some of your volunteers, parents, or other youth workers for a story that you can share by beginning with, "A friend of mine told me." If it's a sensitive topic, you can even change the name and tell students, "This is a true story. I just changed the name to protect the privacy of the person who shared it with me, but they did give me permission to share it." You want to show this topic has a connection with their lives right now, that it matters in their everyday lives. It's difficult to receive challenging information from someone who seems to have no clue what it's like to be you. This is why the me component of any talk is so important and is more than just a traditional introduction. Start with me, introducing your topic, if necessary, a brief introduction of yourself, and show that you understand at least a little bit about an issue or topic in your students' lives. Then we move on to we. Like a good movie or a story, you want to develop a tension, a pain point that needs to be resolved. And you want to develop this as a shared tension or question for everyone in the room as much as possible. Don't transition from we to the next section until you feel like you've created a tension that your students are dying for you to resolve. In other words, start by assuming no one's interested when you begin. You're creating that interest in the room. And you have to do that effectively by thinking through who is or will be or could be in your room. If the text speaks to mostly Christians, what can you say to include or cast a vision for non-Christians? If what you're reading and studying challenges a relationship with siblings, what can you say to kids who don't have any brothers or sisters? If you're teaching about something related to classmates or teachers in a school, what can you say to the homeschooled students? Think through who you usually see in your room and who might be there this week when you teach. Focus on the question you were intending to answer until you're confident your students want it answered. That's the we part of your teaching. Then we move into the God section of our teaching. The goal here is to resolve the tension, or at least some of it, by pointing students to God's thoughts on the subject. We want to engage the students with Scripture. Don't just read it. Don't explain it to death. Engage the students with it. Take them with you. Make this part of the journey of learning. Make it so fascinating that they're actually tempted to go home and read it on their own. Too often we want to start with Scripture, which makes sense if you're doing a book study with a small group. However, even then I would challenge that a good teacher would open up each lesson by looking at the topic the text brings up and begin the lesson with some questions to establish common ground and tension to motivate the students to go to the text to find what it has to offer. Never rush through the reading of the text, and never make this the most boring part of your talk. I see both of these happen in sermons and in youth lessons. They get to the reading the scripture
And it is super fast.
because they want to get to the part where they teach. Or they switch from being excited and engaging to very monotone and very serious, as if this part is different from the rest of what they're saying in a way that makes it less than. Read the scripture as if you just discovered it as brand new information from God. Or read it as if it's a treasured letter from a loved one that you have read over and over and over again. Because hopefully in youth ministry you have and you do. I'll share more in other videos about creative ways to develop this part of your teaching. But if we're in youth ministry or student ministry, it's vital that we teach students the Bible well. And so much so that we motivate them to want to go read and study it on their own. Me, we, God, and now you. This is where you tell people what to do with what they have heard. This is where we answer the questions, so what and now what? When you're teaching, this is where you find one specific personal challenge that everybody can embrace. Challenge students to try something for a day, a week, or a month. Often I'll tell my students, for the next 6 days, I want you to try this. Or in the next 6 days, give this a try. Maybe I'll say, hey, this month, my challenge for you is to do this. As you write this part, think about individuals, their families, the church family, the school, the community, believers, unbelievers, those not in the room, boys, girls, different grades. Keep in mind all the different types of people so you know you can give a specific personal challenge to each person who's there. I have another video where I'll explain why 1 point instead of 3 or more, but don't miss the personal part of this challenge. Just as in the we section, you had to make sure that you connected with each type of person in the room, the same applies here. A challenge for someone who's been coming to church with their family their whole life is probably different from a student who came for the very first time today and doesn't have any believers in their family. A challenge for a 6th grade boy is probably different from an 8th grade girl. Just like a challenge for a freshman girl is different than a senior guy. You don't have to overthink this. Just make sure you have options so everyone leaves the room with one specific personal challenge they need to accomplish. Then move into the final section of your teaching. One more section, also called we. There's a sense of community with this piece and a shared imagination. It is really about vision casting. It's a moment of inspiration. If your teaching was a movie, this is where the dramatic music would begin to rise up and motivate people with these feelings of, I need to do something now. It's a hero moment. It's the point in the message where you paint a verbal picture of what could and should be if everyone in the room puts into practice the challenge that you're giving today. In this closing moment, you call upon your students to imagine what the church, the community, their families, maybe even the world would be like if everyone in the room embraced this one challenge. Imagine what we could do together, obeying God, working with God, doing things for God. Now they have the why behind the what they're supposed to do. Now they're motivated to act on what they've learned because they want to resolve the tension. They want to see what we can do with God. And it's no longer individual, me by myself. It's me as a part of this team, this family, this church, this group, this community, what we can do together. So, me, we, God, you, we. 5 parts to a healthy and effective teaching structure in student and youth ministry. And if you read the book, you'll find that these pieces don't always have to go in that exact order. Like I said, you could totally start by saying, we're doing a Bible study in the book of John. Let's open up to John chapter 10. And while students are looking for the book of John and finding chapter 10, you can begin to set up this lesson. You can introduce the topic by talking about who in the students' lives they know so well that if they heard that person's voice in the back of the room, they would turn around and look for them. Then you could develop attention by asking how well students know Jesus' words and actions. Are they able to recognize what's Jesus and what's not because of the time they have spent with him? Now you start reading in John 10 to find the solution to that tension, giving students one specific personal challenge, like reading their Bibles for 30 days, focused on the book of John so they can get to know Jesus better, where they will recognize him. And you inspire them what could be different if everyone in the room accepted it. What would it be like if for 30 days, everyone in this room got to know Jesus better? Not only so they recognize what's him, but so they live more like him. What could all of us together living more like Jesus change in our lives, our families, and our community? Like I said, This isn't new with me. It comes from the book Communicating for a Change by Andy Stanley and Lane Jones. It's not a youth ministry book, but I found that this structure works so well, I even use it to reorganize curriculum I purchased so that it flows this way. Sometimes the curriculum has too many points, and so I scale it down. Sometimes it needs a little help with what's going to apply to the students in the room. And sometimes I just reorganize the pieces so that it flows this way and sets students up for wanting to resolve that tension. It's a great structure whether you're writing your own lesson or you're rewriting curriculum for yourself or a volunteer to use. I hope this video helps you with your teaching in youth or student ministry today. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments. May God bless you as you seek to help students know and follow Jesus. And may you remember that we're here to provide you with youth ministry help.